Welcome back to the only tennis analysis channel that refuses to let you sleepwalk through what is about to unfold in the California desert. While every mainstream sports network is busy packaging this Indian Wells round of 16 matchup between Eala and Linda Nosková as some kind of feel-good youth movement story, we are here to do the actual work. The commentators with their perfectly pressed blazers and their rehearsed soundbites are going to throw around words like fairy tale, dream run, and exciting next-generation clash. They are going to make you feel warm and fuzzy about two young players living out their childhood dreams under the Palm Springs sun. And that framing is not just lazy. It is a catastrophic, fundamental misreading of the brutal, unforgiving, and deeply psychological battle that is about to take place on that court. This is not a fairy tale. This is not a stepping stone. What you are about to witness is a full-scale hostile corporate takeover disguised as a tennis match. Two elite athletes, each representing entirely different tennis manufacturing systems, each carrying the weight of their respective infrastructures, walking into a steel cage to determine who gets to own the future of the sport's baseline economy. The loser does not simply go home with a smaller check and a pat on the back. The loser gets violently marginalized in the global attention economy. So let us stop pretending otherwise and get into the forensic breakdown this match actually deserves. To fully understand what is at stake, you must first conduct a complete audit of Linda Nosková, because the mainstream media is doing you a massive disservice by reducing her to a highlight reel and a ranking number. Nosková is not merely a tennis player. She is the latest and most highly optimized product rolling off the assembly line of the most ruthlessly efficient tennis manufacturing operation on the planet. The Czech Republic tennis system does not produce artists. It does not produce entertainers. It produces terminators. It is a highly organized, state-backed machine engineered to mass-produce tall, physically dominant, flat-hitting baseline weapons designed to overwhelm opposition through sheer kinetic violence. And Nosková is the crown jewel of the current production cycle. At 5 feet 10 inches, she possesses a physiological and biomechanical advantage that allows her to generate devastating leverage on every ground stroke she hits. She does not construct points. She does not build rallies with patience or tactical nuance. She ends points abruptly, violently, and without a single ounce of empathy for the player standing across the net. She is a walking, breathing hostile takeover, bid engineered specifically to dismantle the established hierarchy of the WTA Tour. Look at her operational history. Her defining Grand Slam moment came at the 2024 Australian Open when she walked onto the court against world number 2 Iga Swiatek, the most dominant defensive fortress in women's tennis, a player the vast majority of the tour mentally concedes defeat to before the first ball is even struck. When most players draw Swiatek in a major, they pack their bags psychologically and prepare for a 60-minute liquidation. Nosková drew Swiatek in Melbourne, looked directly into the eyes of the establishment, and pulled the trigger without a fraction of a second of hesitation. She dismantled her. That victory was not a fluke. It was a neon-lit declaration to the entire global sports economy that Nosková possesses the psychological wiring required to bankrupt even the most entrenched top-tier assets in the sport. You cannot teach that kind of cold-blooded execution. It requires a fundamental refusal to respect the hierarchy and a deeply ingrained belief that legacy players are nothing more than decaying assets waiting to be removed from the ledger. Her ascent through the rankings tells the same story. She became the youngest player in the WTA Top 100 in 2022, broke into the top 50 just 12 months later, captured a WTA title, and tasted the top 15. She arrives at Indian Wells not as a hopeful challenger but as a fully vested stakeholder expecting to collect a significant dividend. Her game is built entirely around low-margin, high-velocity ball striking, heavy serve, heavy ground strokes, and the ability to dictate every point from the back of the court entirely on her own terms. When analysts talk about heavy ground strokes in the context of the Czech system, they are describing a very specific and deeply dangerous ball trajectory. Nosková hits a remarkably flat ball. She does not loop it over the net with heavy topspin and allow her opponent time to reset. She drives the ball directly and aggressively through the court, cutting off angles and robbing opponents of precious milliseconds of reaction time. In the dry, thin, abrasive desert air of Indian Wells, a flat heavy ball behaves like a kinetic missile. It does not sit up politely in the strike zone. It skids violently through the court. If your footwork is a fraction of a second late, if your racket preparation is delayed by the smallest margin, Nosková's pace will shatter your defensive structure and force you into a humiliating cascade of unforced errors. She is designed to make you feel rushed, panicked, and entirely outmatched. She is a high-frequency trading algorithm executing at a speed your central nervous system simply cannot keep pace with. So how does Eala survive this? How does the Filipina prodigy stop the Czech Terminator from blasting her off the court in straight sets? The answer is buried deep in the historical record. And this is precisely where the mainstream media drops the ball completely. They look at current rankings, they look at recent results, and they treat this match as though it is happening in a vacuum. But professional tennis at this level is not played in a vacuum. It is deeply, fundamentally psychological. It is a game of ghosts, accumulated traumas, and psychological debts that never fully expire. And Eala holds a psychological monopoly over Linda Nosková that dates back nearly a decade. These two players are not strangers. Eala defeated Nosková twice during their junior careers, and the specific circumstances of those victories matter enormously. In 2018 at Les Petits As, the most prestigious junior tournament on the planet, the ultimate proving ground for future global superstars, Eala liquidated Nosková. Then 2 years later on the red clay of Paris at the French Open Juniors quarterfinals, with global scouting agencies watching every movement both players made, Eala did it again. She systematically dismantled the Czech powerhouse on the sport's most historic stage. Think carefully about the compounding psychological debt that creates. Think about what it means for Nosková to look across the net at Indian Wells and see the one player who proved twice, on the biggest developmental stages in the world, that raw flat power is completely useless against elite geometric intelligence. You do not forget losses like those. You carry them for years. They fester quietly and create microscopic fractures in your self-belief that resurface at exactly the wrong moments. Every time Nosková steps up to hit a critical ball against Eala, her subconscious is going to drag her straight back to the red dirt of Paris. Eala does not just own the baseline in this matchup. She owns real estate inside Nosková's head, and at a WTA 1000 round of 16 where the margin between victory and defeat is thinner than a razor blade, that psychological leverage is worth its weight in gold. Eala's tactical blueprint for this match flows directly from her training at the Rafa Nadal Academy, an institution that does not simply teach you how to strike a tennis ball. It teaches you how to weaponize suffering and turn an opponent's aggression into their single greatest liability. Eala knows that Nosková's flat aggressive game relies entirely on rhythm, perfect timing, and a cooperative target. A player who responds to pace with pace, who engages at the level Nosková wants to play at, is handing the Czech exactly the match she has been built to win. Eala has no intention of doing that. Her entire objective is to become the most uncooperative, mathematically frustrating opponent Nosková has ever faced. She is not going to try to hit through Nosková. That would be strategic suicide. You do not fight a tank with a pistol. Instead, Eala is going to deploy her elite heavy topspin to fundamentally alter the geometry of every baseline exchange. She is going to hit the ball deep, high, and heavy, completely neutralizing the strike zone Nosková desperately needs to flatten out her shots. She is going to convert this match from a high-speed sprint into a brutal, lung-burning, lactic acid-soaked war of attrition in the desert heat. Consider the psychological toll that strategy places on a power player. When your entire identity is built on the belief that your best shot ends the point, what happens when you hit your best shot, a massive flat forehand at full pace, and the ball simply comes back? What happens when you hit a second maximum effort shot and it returns again, higher, deeper, and heavier than before? The algorithm begins to glitch. Panic sets in. At the neurological level, Nosková will be forced to manufacture 3, 4, 5 additional shots in rallies she expected to close in 2. The desert heat and the abrasive hardcourt will systematically drain her physical reserves. Her legs will get heavy. Her backswing will tighten. And at precisely the moment where physical exhaustion collides with the deeply embedded psychological trauma of those junior defeats, the unforced errors will begin to cascade. Eala is the ultimate distressed asset investor. She does not force the market to collapse. She positions herself perfectly and waits while the opponent bankrupts themselves through frustration and tactical stubbornness. There is one final dimension that deserves serious analysis, and it is the crowd. Eala is not simply representing herself on this court. She is the sole undisputed representative of the entire Philippines and its enormously passionate, hyper-engaged global diaspora of over 110 million people who treat every match she plays as a matter of national importance. When Eala steps onto stadium court, she brings with her an army that completely hijacks the acoustic environment of the venue. The crowd will not be neutral. It will be a localized, deafening version of Manila. Nosková is accustomed to the quieter, more sterile atmosphere of European tournaments. She is going to walk into a wall of sound engineered to isolate her, disorient her, and push her central nervous system into a state of perpetual low-grade panic. Every double fault will be received with noise. Every unforced error will be met with a roar that shakes the concrete. Eala does not experience that crowd as pressure. She metabolizes it as fuel, converting the weight of collective expectation into cold-blooded execution. The casual fan will look at Nosková's ranking and her victory over Swiatek and assume that Eala's run ends here. Let them believe the surface-level statistics. The people who actually understand the ruthless business of elite sport know that statistics become irrelevant when they collide with historical trauma, geometric superiority, and the momentum of a fully mobilized global market. Nosková thinks she is walking into a standard tennis match. In reality, she is walking blindly into a psychologically devastating trap constructed 6 years ago on the junior courts of France. The baseline belongs to the player who controls the risk. The future belongs to the player who can weaponize court geometry while managing the suffocating pressure of the global attention economy. Eala is not a fairy tale. She is a precision-engineered machine designed to dismantle legacy power structures one match at a time. The boardroom doors are locked, the audit has begun, and the hostile takeover is very much still in progress.